Welcome back to Big Mouth and welcome to yet another edition of the dceu Daily. And you can have more madcap fun with me continuing on from these brilliant videos that I do over on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut is over a week away, so I think it's a good time to kind of look back, look at what went right, look at what went wrong, and look at this extraordinary situation coming from a different perspective. It's always a very interesting thing in life when someone sets you up. What do I mean by that? I'm not talking about a friend, I'm not talking about The Fugitive here. I'm talking about the old days we used to have arranged marriages. Even people from my community, the Greek Cypriot community, you'd be introduced to someone and then you'd end up marrying them if you basically liked talking to them for 5 minutes in a little party setting. And I think this is very similar to what happened with the DC Extended Universe. WB wanted to do a DC franchise, a movie, a live action universe. And so just coming off the back of the 3 Dark Knight movies, they decided to go to Christopher Nolan. And Nolan said, listen, I don't want to start working on a live action franchise. It's not my bag. I want to do my own films. I'm happy to continue working with you people, but I don't want to do superheroes. But I'm happy to godfather this. I'm happy to sit down with David Goyer, who's got a great idea. So this really all started with Superman and Goyer coming up with this idea for Man of Steel during kind of having writer's block with The Dark Knight Rises. So he went to Chris and he said, listen, I've got this idea, a contemporary alien invasion idea. Chris said, that's awesome. They started penning the story together. And so Warner Brothers got really excited that they'd come up with an idea for Superman. And they said, hey, you know, Chris, why don't you godfather this whole thing? We want to do a DC live action franchise. So what happened about 2011, 2010? They went to the showrunners of Smallville, which of course was a pre-Superman story, and said, you're going to have to finish the show. We're going to do a DC live action universe. We don't want a Superman TV show at the same time. And so it was decided, they went to WBTV's head, Peter Roth, and they said, you got to get rid of it. It's got to finish. And so that's what happened. So Smallville finished, and then they started developing Man of Steel. So Christopher Nolan made it absolutely clear he was not interested in writing and directing and being kind of getting his hands wet with a DC live action franchise. So he said to the studio, listen, I like Zack Snyder. So it's a very interesting situation because Warner Brothers have got an interesting history with Zack because of Watchmen. So Watchmen ended up being the same situation as Man of Steel, but especially BVS because it divided again the audience. Some people think it's amazing. Some people think it's a pile of shit. That's just where it is. I've seen it once. I haven't read the comics before, but I like the film. Looks beautiful. It works. He gets great performances from the actors. I think it's a great movie. One of the greatest movies ever made. I think Snyder's a visionary, as you know. And so it's interesting with Warner Brothers. So they were a bit iffy on this. And listen, Zack's a visionary director. He's very talented, but we don't think he's the right man to do this. And he said, listen, if I can't work with Zack Snyder, I'm out. So instead of them saying, do you know what, Chris? We have creative differences here. Happens all the time, doesn't it? We'll go our way, you go yours. Thank you for the Dark Knight. If you're not interested in doing DC anymore, I'm sure you'll come up with something, a project we can work together on. But they didn't do that. They said, okay, go and talk to Zack and Deb. So they had dinner together, and Zack and Deb kind of just didn't see Superman. They just didn't see it. They said this before. They said they didn't see a contemporary way of doing Superman. And they said that if there's no contemporary way of doing Superman, they didn't want to touch it. They didn't want to do kind of a Christopher Reeve Superman the movie, that kind of thing. So, because Zack's that type of filmmaker, and he sees these characters differently. Big Superman fan, he and his children used to watch Smallville, but he didn't want to touch it unless he could do something that meant something. And so anyway, he read Goyer's script, and he loved it, and they've said it before publicly. We thought the story was brilliant, and we definitely thought we could work with it. And that was Zack and Deb, and that's what they said. And so Snyder started working out his own avenue to tell a DC live-action universe. And so, important to remember that the Man of Steel concept and story is David Goyer's and partly Christopher Nolan's baby. It's their visionary baby, isn't it? But the more Zack was working with them, the more of his own things he was putting in there, because he, of course, was tasked by Nolan to continue the story. And so they did Man of Steel, and it was controversial. The breaking of Zod's neck, certain other avenues, and people didn't seem to appreciate what Snyder, Goyer, and Nolan were attempting to do here. And some people thought it was the most amazing superhero movie they'd ever seen. I remember watching it and just being blown away by it. I think it's an amazing take on Superman, because you want new voices to say something new with these iconic characters that are over, well, nearly 100 years up, not far off from being 100 years old anyway. They've been around for a good time, and so many people have had something different to say about them, the way it should be as far as I'm concerned. So already you had a controversy about Man of Steel. There was a decision to be made, wasn't there, obviously? As a company, you look at it, you look at the reaction, you look at the money. So they actually decided to go with Snyder. I suppose they kind of blamed Goyer and Nolan more than Snyder for Man of Steel. I don't think there's anything to blame anyone about. But so you quickly saw that Nolan was not going to pen the story for the next film, which was announced to be Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. And so all of a sudden, Zack Snyder recruits Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck suggests Chris Terrio. Chris Terrio is right up Snyder's street. They see these things the same way. So they kind of come up with something together. They look at Goyer's original treatment for a Man of Steel sequel, but they pretty much bin it. There are a few things in there, but mostly it's Zack's and Chris's vision. And so again, if you go back in time and go and see this film, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, you will see a film it's not a typical superhero film. In fact, it's very indie, and it pops a different way. From the moment the film starts with the leaves over the WB insignia, and the wording being so small, normally in superhero stories, it's interesting actually. Nolan doesn't like opening credit sequences, so you never get any credits on Nolan movies, and you didn't on Man of Steel. That kind of shows you who was running Man of Steel. But Snyder does like his credit sequences, and of course he used the kind of Batman origin story to have the credits popping up. So the big differences were there already. This was really Snyder's vision. So very different. And of course, this was a polarizing movie. People hate what they don't understand. I put this on Twitter yesterday. Got a good response. So thank you if you responded well to that. Or you can respond anyway to my stuff. Opinions are opinions. But people hate what they don't understand. That's what Martha tells Clark Kent while he's dressed as Superman at the Kent farm in Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. What an ironic line of dialogue for such a polarizing movie and for the director who gave it to us. People hate what they don't understand. It's like he knew what was going to fucking happen, right? Wow. I'm watching this film the first time, actually, while we're sitting here. I'm sure I've mentioned this before. And I'm thinking, this is different, but I really like it. And I'm saying, this is going to be a critically acclaimed movie. I actually genuinely believe that. Believe it, you're going to start freeze-framing this video, screenshotting it and making fun of me on the internet. Probably happened already. But I thought this was going to be a critically acclaimed, multi-Oscar winning movie. I thought we were going to get another Dark Knight. I thought it was a pioneering film, and I thought everyone was going to love this film. So it shocked me. I was genuinely shocked. I knew at the time there was some kind of thing going on where it was fashionable to shit over DC, no matter what they did, and to say Marvel is the best thing ever. That all started when Avengers Assemble was released. Marvel is the best, Feige is the best, Whedon is the best, everyone in the MCU is great. We even had the guy, I forgot his name now, who plays Falcon, right? Saying Man of Steel was a bad movie. How dare you? You know, keep in your lane, mate. Shut the F up. You know, yes, everyone's entitled to their opinions, but you're working for the opposition. You're a little bit biased, aren't you? Anyway, I thought it was an amazing movie, but it polarized audiences. That's putting it mildly. That's putting it politely. And this was before the whole Snyderverse fandom really made themselves known. It was a very painful time if you loved that movie. And it was really weird to understand why people hated it. But I think that Terrio's line, people hate what they don't understand, is such an apt line for the Snyderverse and for Snyder's work, all of Snyder's work, right? Apart from Dawn of the Dead, where mainly people loved him and thought this is the beginning of a new visionary director, which it was. We never thought he'd be polarized. He'd be polarizing anything. But once, there's a difference between doing an old zombie movie, redoing an old zombie movie, and then grabbing your hands on Watchmen, which is a beloved, graphic novel. It's so different. It's typical, but it's right up Snyder's street, isn't it? These gritty, kind of weird, real-world characters who are not all pure and, hello, ma'am, how can I help you? They're really relatable, realistic characters. It'd be like having superheroes in the real world. So you give that to Snyder and he puts his own take on it. Then he does the same with Superman. Then he does the same with Batman and Superman. Then he's got this whole kind of 5-movie arc. So he's done 2 of them, right? So with Batman versus Superman, there was already a problem because they blamed Nolan and Goya for Man of Steel. Again, nothing to blame them for. But anyway, they wanted their $1 billion. They didn't make it. So now there was a problem. Snyder wanted to release a 3-hour cut. They said, no, too long, you need to cut it. So he cut it down to just about 2.5 hours, didn't he? And so the problem with this is Snyder had a problem with the editing because he couldn't fit in relevant points so the film made sense to normies. Now, to you and me, who loved the theatrical cut before we saw the Ultimate Edition, you can't watch the theatrical cut anymore because the Ultimate Edition just does everything, doesn't it? It's like me not putting sugar in my tea. It's not the fucking same, is it? And so he couldn't do what he wanted to do creatively with the 2.5 hours. Already they'd started interfering. Nolan had protected him. Nolan had protected him with Man of Steel, but there was no one to protect him anymore because they got rid of Nolan. They said, we don't want you involved in anymore. It's down to Zack now. We're giving him authority. We're going to let him have his freedom. So Chris kind of walked away happily thinking they were going to leave Zack alone. He was wrong. He was naive. Everyone was naive. And, everyone was chomping at the door to change BVS from what it was. So the idea was in the marketing to make it look like a popcorn chomping blockbuster. Who wins, Superman or Batman? That's not what the film was. We know that. The film is a really deep dive at deconstructing Superman and Batman, but the idea is to deconstruct them and then reconstruct them in the other movies. For example, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, which we will see in over a week's time, Justice League 2 and Justice League 3 would literally put Cal back in the red and blue and he'd be the ultimate Superman, right? The Superman everyone reads in the comics. This was supposed to be a Superman story and a Batman story and a Wonder Woman story, Flash, Aquaman, everyone. Everyone was being deconstructed, but then they'd be reconstructed by the 3rd chapter of this Justice League trilogy. That was the plan. Good plan. But unfortunately, we live in a world where the normies, the mainstream audience, don't get it. They want to be spoon-fed. They want jokes because they started watching the MCU and liking it. They wanted everyone to do the same thing. And so this film was so polarizing, and the hatred for this film on Twitter, on social media, and a lot of it coming from people like your campiers and people like that. These people were everywhere. Screen junkies, or whatever they're called. Anyway, there was a lot of hate for this movie. And it was interesting because, again, you've got a situation like with the first film, Man of Steel, where you could say, do you know what, Zack? This simply isn't working out for us. We have creative differences. But they didn't use that out. So Zack had brought on David Ayer to do Suicide Squad, right? They allowed him to bring him on. So Ayer does his film. Who knows what that film actually is because we haven't actually seen his true film, right? He does his film. And then they look at it and they say, no. We've just had a lot of shit over BVS. you're not doing this. So they cut it down, they make him reshoot it, he waters it down for them, and he toes the company line, which broke David's heart. We know that now. So already with BVS and then Air's movie, they started interfering because they were scared. What they're doing is natural for business people. You know, you may be thinking, WB, I hate WB. What you did to Zack and Dave was disgusting. But to them, it's utterly normal to do this and to interfere when they think something's going wrong. And so they interfered because they were scared. The audience and critical reaction was no good for them. This is a DC franchise. Every movie should be averaging around $800 to $1 billion. A Justice League movie, for example, should be making Force Awakens money or Endgame or Infinity War money. This is the facts. That cannot be argued with, right? Now, who knows what kind of money Zack's movie, this movie he's going to be released. Now, forget the original theatrical cut he was going to release, right? Because they wanted him to reduce the length of that movie as well. We'll get there. I think that movie could have done particularly quite well. Obviously better than Justice League did. I always predicted about 800 million to 950 million. I think it would have done about the same money as BVS, maybe more, right? But I think this version he's releasing now, the over 4-hour version, now, with the way things are and the way the tide's turning in a natural, normal theatrical release, I think this would cross $1 billion and be a big success for the studio. And then you'd have the evidence that you'd have to restore the Snyderverse. So anyway, they'd interfered. They tried to interfere with BVS, but then they let him release the Ultimate Edition because they had no choice, which was an amazing film. I like Suicide Squad, the way they did it, but I know there's a better movie there. And then Wonder Woman. Now, what happened with Wonder Woman was Zack brought in Patty Jenkins, but Zack was very hugely involved with the development of that story. Zack was very, very invested. The problem is, Zack probably wanted to direct that as well, but they said, no, we want a woman to do this. This is the talk now, this is the way things work politically within the industry. You must have a woman directing a female superhero. Nuts, right? But that's the way it works. So he wanted to find a female that was talented, obviously, and that he could work with. Now, Zack he absolutely treats people fairly. He works with people of colour. He casts people from different cultures and different backgrounds. And Zack cast a woman who was always going to give her opinion about what she was doing. After all, her name was down as director. She had every right to. So Zack liked that about Patty, that she was keeping him honest, saying, look, I don't like this. I want her to have some heart. I want her to be compassionate. Patty's take on Wonder Woman is always that she's got to be kind and compassionate, and she must always choose love. And this is why you get to the end of the fight with Ares, and she goes, I choose love. That's Patty's take. This is where Patty if you want to see what Patty kind of put into the film, it's that element of it, where Snyder wants the sword and the shield, and he wants Wonder Woman to be epic and brutal. That's how Snyder sees her. We've already heard the story about the Crimean War, right? And what he was getting, her holding their heads, right? So we already know how Snyder sees Wonder Woman and how Jenkins sees Wonder Woman. But Zack's all right with that because he likes her as a person. He likes her as a director. She went public after Wonder Woman 84, thinking she was clever about the issues that she thought she labelled as the studio. But we now know that Patty and Zack see things differently, and that's okay. That's not a toxic situation. But with Wonder Woman, the first one is more Zack's take on the character than Patty's. No question about that. His VFX, a lot of his directing as well. Most of the work for that film was his, and she's like the episode director. We've had that kind of discussion before. But they interfered with that film as well. I'm sure that Ben Affleck was going to make a face appearance. We were actually going to see Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne or Batman in the first Wonder Woman, and we just got the van, what's it called, Wayne Enterprises van or whatever it is, lorry or whatever you want to call it. That's the level of connectivity we got in that film. So Wonder Woman 84 is one of my favourite superhero movies of all time, but there was interference again. Already they were concerned. And so we get to Justice League, and Zack and Chris Terrio have got this mammoth script which the studio don't like. So we recently found out from Zack in one of those big interviews he did, where they all of a sudden brought in Jeff Johns, they brought in Joss Whedon to kind of add some humour. So basically, Whedon was already introduced before Zack was driven out. So that's interesting. It's very similar to what happened to Dick Donner and Richard Lester when they were kind of working together on the first film, because Dick Donner wouldn't talk to the Salkinds anymore. And so you've got this situation. He's working with Johns. He's working with Whedon. They're there interfering with his vision because they've been told to be there and it's their job to be there. So originally, before Jeff Johns became like chief operating officer or whatever you call it of DC, him and Zack actually worked quite well together. Now, we recently found out that all that stuff on the whiteboard that Zack had put down and pitched about Justice League 2, some of that was put down by Jeff Johns. So there must have been a point when these two were working quite well together. Always remember about Jeff Johns, though. Passionate DC fan, and he let his passion get the better of him. That's the issue with Jeff Johns, I think, and Zack's relationship breaking down. And so there's big problems with Justice League. But this is the interesting moment for me, a very interesting moment, because when they finally part company, and it is creative differences, there's no way you can blame the reason that Snyder steps down from the movie and walks away from the movie on anything else but creative differences. Yes, Zack's already said he had no fight in him because he lost his daughter. And quite right too. Family matters more than this. Ultimately, right? Zack's all right financially. He doesn't have to keep on working, but he wanted to, but he couldn't fight them because he was mourning for his daughter and his family. His wife and other children needed him. So he stepped down, but ultimately he was driven away because of creative differences. But this is what interests me. When they put out the official statement, they come up with this big thing that Zack is friends with Joss. He wants Joss, his friend, to finish the movie with him. He trusts him to do the right thing with the movie. All this, and he was stepping down because he thought he could continue after Autumn's death, but he realised he couldn't. That was the official line. Not once did the studio come out and say, we've parted because of creative differences. It's how Kathleen Kennedy put things when she split with the original directors of Solo: A Star Wars Story. It happens all the time. Creative differences, creative differences, creative differences. Surely that would have been a lot easier and a lot more honest to come out and say, Zack and the studio have got creative differences. That's it. But they come out with this cover story of, Autumn's death and Joss, Zack's friend, taking over. Don't you think that's crazy? I do. So why didn't they want to say they had creative differences? I mean, creative differences in the movie industry is kind of the kiss of death. In a way, is this the studio respecting Zack a little bit and not wanting to admit that they had a different vision to the director? Isn't that interesting? Or maybe if they say that, then everyone's going to say, the media and the fans are going to say, well, hang on a minute. You knew Snyder. You knew what his vision is. You know the kind of director and filmmaker and artist he is. Why did you bring him on in the first place? So always very interesting to me, their resistance to say, we parted because of creative differences. Instead, as I say, they come up with this big cover story full of bullshit, basically. And it doesn't make sense because ultimately Zack and Joss are not friends. Zack didn't choose him to finish off the situation. It was a lie. The whole thing was ridiculous. And this is what happens, you see, in life. They think there's people in business. This is the problem with business people who work in studios, especially studios. But this kind of goes for all walks of life. When I used to run the deli counter in the Co-op supermarket, everybody thought they could do a better job. The higher-ups thought I was doing a bad job, too much waste, not enough profit, blah, 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 right? When they tried to do it, it goes wrong. And this is the same thing with Zack. They tried to take over his film. They needed to retool his film and do it their way, but continue his threads. So a ridiculous situation that was going to end in tears. But the thing is with this film, Justice League, which is really interesting to me, is that you see this film and you see something, a mash of two kind of ideas. One is to lighten it up, bright colours, smiles, you know, embarrassing basically. But at times you see these great visuals that Zach obviously put in there, and it's a bit weird. But even with all of that, two things: if Whedon wasn't rushed and the VFX wasn't rushed and Cavill wasn't hacked to death on his upper lip, and the quality of the filmmaking, because they were rushed and they couldn't put quality in it, if they wasn't rushed and they could retool and take their time, the studio would have got away with it. So they actually were exposed and didn't get away with it from their own greed. They wanted this film, by hook or by crook, to be released at the same time as Zach's version was going to be released. Their mentality was wrong, but their mentality was guided by the normies, by the mainstream audience, by access media, by critics. What happened? They tried everything. They brought them onto the set. They got Zach to meet and greet them and be nice to them. I'm sure Zach didn't really want to do that, although Zach's a really nice guy. But anyway, they tried everything. They gave them access, everything, just to try and get them to ease off on this film. They were never going to do that. So what happens is, when Zach's gone, and obviously some of the reviews blame Zach for Justice League, because either they do know and they're being garbage, or they don't know, because Zach's name is on the film. And everyone was led to believe that the film was Zach's, and the editing and the cleanup, it was Joss Whedon was just there to do some editing, a little bit of VFX. That's what we all thought. That's what we were all told. So if you're a critic and you didn't know much of what was going on behind the scenes, you'd kind of blame Zach for the calamity that is Justice League. But the exposure of this film and the toxicity that went on kind of shows you how Hollywood executives really have no idea what it takes to make a film. In fact, Hollywood executives know as much as access media do about what it takes to make a good movie, but just as little as people in the public, the consumer. The consumer these days thinks it knows everything, how a film should be, how CGI should look. Everyone's a fucking expert now, including the up tops at studios. Everybody thinks they know better than the filmmakers, right? Which is not the case. It's really difficult to make, drama on television or films. It takes time. You've got the development, everything. You've got to come up with a perfect story. You've got to cart everything, and that's just a little bit of what you have to do. It's really difficult. It takes time. You want to get everything perfectly. The last thing you want is an itchy fingers kind of studio. But the problem is as well, they're investing money in you. They want a little bit of a say. But also, if you're bringing in kind of a visionary director like Zach, 75% of what's going on has to be down to him. He needs at least that freedom. But the studio, the people, the investors should have at least 5-10% kind of say in what's going on. After all, it is their money. That's how I see it anyway. And so, ultimately, this is a big lesson to everyone who thinks they know better than filmmakers, that you brought in a guy that you didn't want and you didn't ask for, but you went with it because the guy you brought in said, I'm bringing this guy. This is where it is. And they had so many opportunities just to say, Zach, it's time to part company. At the end of Man of Steel and at the end of BVS. But they allowed him to carry on developing Justice League. That's insane. You don't believe in what this person is doing. But you still are going to allow him to make more films, right? You didn't like what he did with Man of Steel because he didn't bring you $1 billion. You certainly didn't like what he did with BVS because the reaction from the critics and the normies. But still, you allowed him to do the next movie. In what world, in what universe is this normal corporate behaviour? It's like me just turning up, opening the gates of Hollywood and saying, hello everyone, I'm making a film today. I'm wearing a Superman top, but yeah, and just bullshitting. Basically just pretending I have connections in making a movie, right? It's nuts, right? Because that's how I see these corporates. It's like they've walked off the street. You've got a really good director, a skillful artist like Zack Snyder, right? You've brought him on. Let him do his arc. All you had to do was be patient because his movies wasn't flops. That's the big joke here. Man of Steel made around 650 or just under 700 million. That was good for how much it took to make it. But of course, it's a Superman movie. But at that point, by the way, even the MCU origin movies weren't making any more than that. So that was one of the most successful origin movies financially at that time. In line with Raimi's Spider-Man. So there was no reason to say that film was a flop. Then BVS made just under $1 billion, right? So what did it make? 850, 900, 950, whatever. It's semantics, isn't it, basically? So that film did well, but not well enough. You've got a film with Batman and Superman. But it was a polarizing movie, so it didn't make the $1 billion, $2 billion, whatever they wanted it to make. Certainly an improvement on MOS's box office, but you would expect more with those two characters. But again, polarizing films split everyone in two, so there was a lot of divide over that film. But still, it's not a flop. It's made a big profit. So that's how they saw it, I suppose. They said, right, BVS is a success. Carry on, Zack, do Justice League. So this is what's really confusing to me. They had seen the movie he made before. They saw the reaction to that movie. But instead of saying, you know what, no, you're not doing Justice League. We'll get someone else to do Justice League. You've done BVS now. Superman's dead in that. We're going to have to do something here. We're going to get a creative to do his own continuation, right? It's over. But that's what normal people would do. I didn't want that to happen because I love Zack. You love Zack. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying to you is it's actually insane that these people allowed someone they didn't believe in to carry on, and they thought, we'll just interfere with his work. How was that ever going to end? Oh, you can't have a 2.5-hour movie. You've got to make it 2 hours. You can't certainly have a 3-hour movie. And Sugihara would have been nuts if Zack took him a 4-hour movie, right? The Sugihara must be having nightmares right now. So it's really interesting because they could have parted company at any time. But they kept on giving him the green light to do more. That's kind of strange, isn't it? When you don't believe in what someone's doing. And I think with the internet now, Hollywood are being exposed so much. It's kind of laughable now when you see them come on social media telling us to be kind and this and that. And the lectures. Was it James Gunn on Twitter? When I woke up this morning, he's like going, don't talk about cancel culture. Stop saying anything to cancel culture. And I actually quote tweeted him. One day he's going to block me, right? And I like him as a creative, so I hope that doesn't happen. But I've got to be free. I said, listen, you're a millionaire. You're a millionaire director, James. You have no right to tell people what to say and what not to say. You talk about freedom of speech, then you want to take it away. Make your mind up. I'm sick to death of it, right? Anyway, and so, but it is interesting. It is interesting. The whole Snyder saga is so interesting to me because, as I say, they could have nipped this in the bud at any time, and then they could have, for example, if Whedon had come in after BVS and done his own Justice League, no one's going to know any different. I mean, the fans of BVS would have been angry, but I don't think there would have been a campaign or anything. People would have just taken it on the chin. That's what I think. I don't think people would have stood up for Zack. I think because this is the thing. If Zack doesn't actually make Justice League, there's nothing to fight for. You can fight for the restoration of the Snyderverse, but after BVS, who's going to stand with you under the sun? That's the problem. That's the problem. Because he made a movie and there's something actually to fight for, and we could see he was robbed and cheated, and the version we got instead was terrible. There was something to fight for. So thankfully, he made his own movie. That's a good jumping off point. But if Whedon had done his own Justice League, I think it would have been received fine. And I think those of us who call Justice League a piece of shit, because it is a piece of shit, we wouldn't have thought any better, Zack got his 2 movies and now it's a new creative in there. So things could have been so different if they just parted company with Zack at the right time, but they didn't, and they decided to interfere with him. They basically fucked with the wrong Marine. And this is where we are now. We are so close to the restoration of the Snyderverse, it's a fucking joke. I think it's brilliant. I'm so excited. I think every DC fan's going to get what they want. you know, a more a lighter, watered down central universe. You can have an Elseworld Snyderverse over on HBO Max. Everyone's going to get their way, so there should be no infighting. I will be talking about infighting between our community at the end of this video, so look out for that. Now, a bit of a timey-wimey thing right now, because while you're watching this, you've probably already seen my reaction to the Flash's trailer for Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. It's about 9:50, 10 a.m. here in Cyprus right now, so nobody's seen the Flash promo yet, but today is Flash Day, but by the time you see this, I would have reacted to it, and you would have seen the promo multiple times. And I will do a video, and I've definitely, as I say, you would have seen that video, and I will be doing, it's very confusing, isn't it? But even though you've already seen the video, I'm telling you in a later video that I will be doing a promo, a trailer reaction for that video. It's all very confusing, isn't it? Anyway, and so because it's the Flash Day today, I want to talk about the Flash as well, and how Joss Whedon did Ezra Miller dirty. And he really did. I mean, if you look in the comics or the history of Barry Allen, forget Bart Allen and the other versions of the Flash, but Barry Allen, right? Barry Allen has never been a quirky, jokey, weirdo character like he was in Justice League. That is not who Barry Allen is. Even when you see him in the Grant Gustin version, there's humour, but he ain't Sideshow Bob. He isn't the joke of the outfit. He's not, listen, he's not Tom Holland's Spider-Man. That's not what he is. And that's exactly what Whedon attempted to do to him. And, you know, it's really sad when I hear people like Grace Reynolds say, I don't like Ezra Miller's The Flash. It isn't his fault, is it? You know he's a great actor. You know he was awesome in Fantastic Beasts and every other role he's ever played. And whatever he was asked to do in Justice League, he did it well as an actor, a performer, and an artist. And even in the early kind of teaser trailer for Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut, when he's saying to Batfleck, you know, Steppenwolf's beaten people before and all that, he looks more serious, doesn't he? It's not the jokey Barry Allen, the Flash we saw in Justice League. So I believe when we, and of course we've already seen it, and I've already reacted to it, but anyway, I'm doing it early. It's difficult to post these videos. I wish I could just do this and post this now before I would have done the reaction. But life's confusing and you're just going to have to live with it. So, yeah. And so I think what we would have seen from the Flash promo by now is that this is going to be a more serious character. I mean, I haven't seen the promo yet, but I don't know. But I think Zack's take on this character is more serious. He might be lighter because he's younger than the other characters, but he's not going to be Sideshow Bob. He's not going to be the movie's clown. And as Zack's already said, there's not going to be many jokes in this film. And so, suffice to say, this is going to be a deeper dive on Barry Allen, thankfully, because what Whedon did to him was, he did him dirty. It was despicable. I think that, creatively, Ezra Miller got one of the worst deals out of everyone from this film. You know, because, as I say, when you see Ezra Miller doing dark and compelling stuff, he's amazing. But the Flash that we saw in Justice League isn't the Flash, isn't Barry Allen's version of the Flash. No one has attempted to make this guy a clown before, running around, sitting in the Batmobile, oh, you know, crap like that. Now, I didn't mind him being scared to face Steppenwolf in Justice League. I thought it kind of made sense if he'd never really fought anyone before. So I wasn't that angry about that. But this guy is a hero. He has had to live with the fact that his father is accused of killing his mother all his life. So there should be a sterner quality there. And I'm looking forward to seeing kind of the stuff between his father in prison, if it's the same stuff or if Whedon reshot that. We know about an hour of Justice League, give or take a few minutes, is pretty much Zack's footage. So that's interesting. But it doesn't matter whose footage it is, it's the way you edit it. It's kind of the context it's edited in and how the audience see it. So the way we see Zack's footage in Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut is going to be very different to how we saw Zack's footage in Justice League. So that's very important to remember for those of you who say it's the same movie, blah, blah, blah. It's absolutely not the same fucking movie, right? Simple as that. So, yeah, Ezra Miller was done dirty. No question about that. I wanted to talk about this briefly. AT&T opened yesterday the Zack Snyder's Justice League exhibit in Dallas. This is interesting. Now, I think this is where the leaked whiteboard comes from, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of people were saying that Warner Bros. Wanted to close it down, blah, blah, blah. That's not true. This was always happening. But it's amazing that Paul Snyder, he's actually set up a Zack Snyder's Justice League exhibit. That's nuts. That's nuts. This guy is promoting this movie and himself and fighting to restore his verse of DC all in one go. It's amazing. Don't you tell me that Zack Snyder wants to move on. Don't you tell me to just watch this movie and enjoy it and it'll be over. That's not what Snyder wants. And you know it. But it's going to be enjoyable to see everyone's reaction. But this, I'd love to go to that exhibit. So the problem is, I know some people took pictures of it, but they were quickly taken down. So I'm not going to be able to see it. Maybe someone can show me something. But yeah, what a privilege for any of you who are there. My advice, if you're a fan, if you want to restore the Snyderverse, go to Dallas, where you can't probably because there's loads of lockdowns because of COVID. But if you're in Dallas and you're a Snyder fan or you're a DC fan, go there. Don't know what it is. Buy tickets, whatever. Go and see it. Show them that you're interested. This is Zack, again, trying to find a way to prove to the studio that restoring the Snyderverse is viable for them financially. And we need to prove him right. So as I say, absolutely amazing. Brilliant. The virtual premiere of Zack Snyder's Justice League has caused nothing more than infighting. That's not the premiere's fault. That's certainly not Zack's fault. But this is what's happened. As I've said many times, when King Arthur invites a select few to his table, naturally the peasants with little intellect will react in a bad way. That's really understandable in its human nature. But it just keeps on getting worse. I think we all saw the argument from the, let's say, the journalist and the member of Zack Snyder's Snyderverse fandom. I'm not going to say their names, but as a journalist, right, we know the journalist and we know the fan. They've been really getting into it. One of them, we've even seen inbox messages or emails. It's very ugly. I will not respond to it. I will not respond to it. I will not get involved with it. I will not take sides. It's just ridiculous how far we've come. And all because of this virtual premiere. So it's pretty ugly. Now, as you know, personally, I couldn't give a shit about the virtual premiere. I hope you're happy. I hope you have a good time, but I just don't care. It doesn't affect me. It's an exciting thing. It rewards a lot of people, and it's not just people who have access. I've seen a lot of people with 100 followers, 200 followers be invited. So it's not just about people who have access, who have a big following. I did assume that at the beginning, but I've checked out a lot of the people who have posted their invitation. A lot of them are just ordinary, everyday people. So that's good. That's good news for them. I'm happy for them. Genuinely happy for all of you. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I don't need it. You need it more than me. You need that. You want to feel like that Zack's grateful for what you've done and you want to be invited. That's great. That's a beautiful thing. I don't need Zack to get on his bended knees for me. I don't need him to thank me, because you know what the prize, what the reward for me is. The release of Zack Snyder's Justice League in 2018. I don't need thanks. I didn't do much. You know, lots of people did more than I did. All I've done is hashtag on Twitter and talk on here. It's very easy. It's not hard work. Believe you me. The biggest problem I've got in life is to decide which fucking bedroom to sleep in. And I've got quite a few. So, you know, my life isn't that difficult. But a lot of people in this movement have difficult lives. And so I'm happy that they're the ones that get this reward. I don't need, as I say, the only reward I need is to see this film on March the 18th. And I can't wait. And I'm excited. But what I don't want to do is argue with the rest of you. Who's got access and who hasn't got access? I've had arguments with the more elite side of this fandom. Of course I have. I don't hold grudges with them. They probably hold grudges with me. I'm still blocked by them, by the way. But I'm okay. My heart's fine. My soul's fine because I don't hold grudges. I don't hate people who get rewards. I don't. Because once you go down that line of jealousy and envy and bitterness, hate only hurts the hater. So it's not worth it. So this is why I'm always smiling, always happy. I've always got my little smiling and laughing emojis with everything I post on Twitter because I'm a happy person. I'm a happy person. I'm a relaxed person. I love my stories. I love my TV dramas and I love my movies. I especially love DC and I love the Snyderverse. And I've supported it from day one. And that's the truth, isn't it? So I don't have anything to worry about. I have nothing to be angry with other people I've never met about. I think what you need to remember is chill out. And also, how does this look? When people call us toxic and we have silly little arguments like this, how does it go down? The truth is in life, nobody is on the right side of history. Not you, not me. When we argue, right, you're not right and I'm not right. I'm speaking my own truth, not a universal truth. You're speaking your own truth, not a universal truth. But when people fall out, they think each one is speaking like their truth is universal. But nobody's truth is. We have our opinions. We put our opinions out there and we leave it at that. If there's a heated debate, there's a heated debate. An exchange of opinions, of ideas, that's great. But when you take it to the level of screenshotting inboxes and threatening people via inboxes what you're going to do to them and trying to expose that they're bad people, for me, I have to leave you at there. I wouldn't unfollow you or block you myself, but I have to have less interaction for a little while with you because it's just boring to me. We fought for nearly 4 years for this, and it's happening. So, people are going to the virtual premiere. So what? Shake them by the hand and stop doing this. If anyone deserves it, it's you. It's not about deserve. I said this on another video, didn't I? It's not about deserve. People have been handpicked to go. Be happy for them. Doesn't matter. It's not. Nobody deserves anything in life. You don't have a divine right to be rewarded by one of the most talented directors, the most talked about directors in the world. You either get chosen or you don't. I haven't been chosen, and that's okay. I don't hate anyone who's been chosen. I'm very happy for you, and I hope you have a very lovely time, and you come back and tell me everything, how you felt about the film. No spoilers, but tell me what you thought of the film. That's awesome. Peace. Let's all be friends. Comment down below, like, share, and subscribe. And I'll be back tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. And yes, by now you would have seen my Flash promo reaction as well. I wonder how that's going to go. Timey-wimey.